Here.
Hail them.
Hailing frequencies open, sir.
Hailing frequencies. Open.
I don't know why I keep giving alien street food a chance. It's always such a gamble.
Captain, we're being hailed.
On screen.
Hello, and welcome to another Hailing Frequencies Open podcast where we continue to trek through the past and future of Star Trek. I am your host, reporting for duty as usual, and joining me in the virtual studio. His high school guidance counselor was confused when he put Starfleet captain down as a career goal. It's Damien.
I'm Mike Jones. As I age, I think that maybe ship's counselor would have been maybe the best role for me, or maybe maybe not so much responsibility.
Do you find yourself tapping yourself behind the ear like Barclay to relieve stress?
Yeah, all my tricks that Counselor Troy taught me. Yes,
exactly.
It has yet to work.
And you were already hearing her giggle. She knows a thing or two about being in a military family, which will come up today. It's Lanita.
Hi, Mike Jones. Hi,
Hi.
Damon. How are y'all doing today?
Be happy to be here.
Good. Very happy to be here.
Super excited for today.
Woohoo. Well, let's not waste any time. We have an honored special guest today. She is one of the senior transgender officers in the U.S. military today and author of Forging Queer Leaders, How LGBTQ plus, IA plus. Listen, we can't even get it right ourselves. How the LGBTQIA plus community creates impact from adversity. She has a master's degree from the in National Security and Strategic Studies from the Naval War College, and a Master of Science in Astronautical Engineering from the Air Force Institute of Technology. My God, how did we get her here? She's also a huge Trekkie. Please welcome to the pod, Colonel Bree Fram.
It is awesome to be here. Join you, Mike, Damien, Lanita. I can't wait to talk about the intersection of all things Trek and science and Space Force and queer and fun. It should be a blast to spend some time with you.
Woohoo! First of all, if you're watching the YouTube version, Bree has a lovely Star Trek pen on. And is this a t-shirt? Does this say coffee?
It is. Voyager has kind of faded away from this, but it used to be back there from the coffee black. So gotta get it done tonight. It was either this or Picard face palming as my choice of t-shirt, because that's an expression I wear frequently.
Yeah, I have that. I wish I would have that on a coffee mug. I do have that coffee mug in the other room. So had you shown up in that, I would have been compelled to run and go get it.
I was so sad the other day when I wore it and I realized, oh my God, I've worn this enough that Voyager has faded away and I need a new t-shirt. So.
No, it's okay. It's always great. It's well loved.
It's a well-loved.
It's a well-loved. And it keeps in track with us talking to so many Janeways recently. Like Coffee Black has been top of mind.
It really
yes,
has
we have had like a revolving door of Janeway drag queens somehow that has become our like podcasting niche, which has been delightful. So that's time to pitch.
We keep saying we're going to have a summit of all the Janeway drag queens that we know, all in one big episode. But they might just try to out Kate Mulgrew each other for the whole hour.
I'm loving also, which you pointed out to us when we met at the con several months ago, that you're wearing the Starfleet Delta, which is so similar to the Space Force Delta. It's a coincidence.
Yeah, because if you can see behind me, you can see the Space Force Delta as well. And I love telling the story of that because people are like, hey, Space Force, why did you steal that from Star Trek? And I'm like, well, no, we didn't. This is a military space symbol going back to the 50s, so pre-Star Trek. And Star Trek actually repurposed it from the military. And so we're just kind of reclaiming a little bit of our heritage. And the Delta is how we organize ourselves. Not only is there rich symbolism in it itself, but that's our unit of organization. And so our big units that run a major function of the Space Force are called deltas. So we have a delta that does missile warning. We have a delta that does GPS, and so on and so forth. So it's important for us and cool to have that connected history with Star Trek.
That is beyond cool. Now, do we think that like Gene Roddenberry
Yes.
understood some of this? But I mean,
No.
Gene, well, he had
Mm-mm.
served as he was a pilot.
A little bit, but not that. And I don't think that deep. Like, think about
Okay.
like my mind is sort of like blown a little bit emoji type of. I'm like, oh, okay, similarities, but like the fact that it's full on
Old
ingrained in the
school.
entire old school in the culture, and he sort of said, let's take it, twist it.
Yeah.
I think it's cool.
It's a good
Fascinating.
question. You know, the Starfleet Delta does have one side thinner than the other. And I think that in the 60s, in that sort of mid-century hip mod like art design, you saw that kind of symbol in a lot of like, you know, coffee tables and things like that, like
Mm-hmm.
in design. So I think that it was probably multiple things working, that they wanted to make it look space age and cool, but also very military. And that's something I want to get into, actually. Well, we might as well go out of order. Um, Watching the original series, Starfleet feels very much like a military operation. The Enterprise is a uh, named after, sorry, it is not an aircraft carrier. It's named after a World War II aircraft carrier, and it was originally going to be the Yorktown, another aircraft carrier, is actually a museum now, and I've been on that one. That's kind of cool. But I think that in the 80s, they started to move away from the military thing, and like Roddenberry was upset with Star Trek 6 being so military focused. Um, so all of that to say, Bree, when you were deciding on careers, did Starfleet influence you to join the military?
Star Trek influenced me immensely in what I wanted to do with my life, but it did not connect me to the military
Hmm.
because it was watching an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation almost against my will. My friend literally had to drag me almost kicking and screaming
That's so funny.
to watch an episode. 'Cause I'm like, no, let's go do this other thing. Let's build Legos. Let's do whatever. And I was probably 9 years old at the time. And I watched that one episode and I'm like, I'm going to be Geordi. I am done with dinosaurs. I am no longer going to be a
Wow.
paleontologist. I am going to be an engineer and help
Wow.
humanity spread into the stars. So it was from that point on that I'm like, yep, I'm going to school to be an aerospace engineer. And so that's what led me to my career field, and that I'm going to be an engineer. But I graduated in 2001.
Mm.
And when I was looking for jobs, I was waiting to hear back from a couple different things, and we got attacked. And that was the second
Mm.
moment in my life. It was like, I'm going to do something different. I want to give back. I want to be a part of something larger than myself. And the Air Force was the opportunity for me to use my engineering and be part of that. So in a roundabout way, yes. And we can talk way more about a whole lot of things about how maybe Jordy wasn't my perfect role model and the other things that drove me into the military and the legacy of my family in that area. But Star Trek helped. And now it's a dream come true to be serving in kind of the precursor to what I like to think we can do to create a Starfleet down the road.
That's amazing. Yeah, can you tell us a little bit about your military career? Like, how old were you when you joined? You were in the Air Force originally?
Yeah, I served for 18 years in the Air Force prior to the creation of the Space Force and the ability for engineers to transfer over into the service. So as soon as I got that opportunity, it was like the Space Force would like you. It felt like a marriage proposal when I put in, because engineers were one of the few careers in the Air Force where you had the option and you could apply to join the Space Force. And I'm like, yes. And as soon as I got that letter, would you like to join? I was like, yes, yes, 1,000 times yes, please take me. Because that, again, so many awesome things coming together. But I did a ton of amazing things throughout my career in the Air Force. I worked on launch vehicles, vibration isolation, so they didn't shake payloads apart as we launched them. I worked on missile warning satellites that stand guard night and day. You watch the entire Earth, and you know what's going on at all times. Not only to protect us strategically from nuclear missiles, but also to protect people all around the world from smaller rockets and be able to give troops time to take cover. There's a great example of the system I worked on when Iran launched a number of missiles at our forces in Iraq. Maybe this was 6, 7 years ago now. And it was our system that saw those, knew where they were going to go, and was able to give warning that allowed everyone to take cover. So instead of deaths, we had a few minor injuries. And that's
Wow.
so awesome to be part of that, that we're able to build and create these systems that can keep people safe and give us amazing knowledge about what's going on all around the world and in space. So that was a big part of my career. I've spent some 2 tours at the Pentagon. I was a legislative fellow, so I went over to the Capitol Hill and I worked for a year as a member of a congresswoman's staff. I've done international affairs and worked on the budget and long range planning, acquisition policy. Now I'm doing requirements for future systems. What are the capabilities we're going to need 5, 10 years, 20 years down the road? How do we
Wow.
write the requirement that says, hey, industry, here's what I need you to go build and buy to make sure that we can do this in the future? So,
Wow.
amazing career. I've deployed. I've had the honor of being a commander, leading people. It has been truly incredible and more than I ever could have imagined.
That's amazing. Well, thank you for your service, and I will sleep a little easier tonight knowing that that someone is watching the for I never really thought about it. I guess I live in this Pollyanna world that I could never do military, I think. Because I'm like, who would launch a missile? That's terrible. But of course it's the world, you know it.
Yeah, it's amazing how many bad actors there are out there, and that
Right.
we still resort to conflict.
Mm.
The world has not changed to the point where conflict goes away. And
Hmm.
you say, Starfleet may not have been conceived of as a truly military organization, but they were there to protect and defend. Yes, you've
Right.
got to
Yeah.
explore and do all those amazing things that we want to do, but when bad things happen, you have to
Yeah.
have the people that are willing to put their time, their energy, and even their lives on the line to protect others.
Absolutely. Um, so here's an interesting, speaking of lives on the line, what do you think about families being on the Enterprise? This is a very nerdy question, but but I know like in today's military, sometimes families will live on base or travel or things like that. Um,
Yeah, having families, I think, is really an important part of any career, and being able to take your family with you. So if you're going on a 5-year mission, that's a long time if you're going to be away from your family
yeah.
for that extended period of time. We don't do
Mm.
that. There's a reason we try and limit deployments to a lot less than that. Or we try and make sure that if people are going to extended time away, you have that ability to have your family with you. So it makes sense some of the time. Now, if they know they're going to be in conflict, okay, yeah, leave the saucer section behind. Do that type of work.
Right.
So I think
Evacuate.
there are options for it, and you base it on the environment. What am I expecting to face? Am I going out to fight the Borg today? No, don't bring your family. But am I running cargo between two worlds in the Federation and that's my primary mission? Sure. Bring your family along. If you have that opportunity, makes a lot of sense.
I like that.
Families on
Um,
Deep Space Nine, nowhere else. 'Cause, you know,
Right. You're going to have your
right,
families on space stations. You probably, if
correct.
you're at war, don't have them on your warships.
right. That's yeah. I feel like the writers definitely moved away from the family thing after TNG. We didn't really see that happen again, and I think that the storytelling moved to more war stories, like in Deep Space Nine. But you know, anyway. So we've talked about the intersection of the military and Star Trek. Let's bring in the intersection of, let's add another angle and talk about your time being out as a trans woman in the military. Like,
Yeah, there's so much we could get into there, but by and large, my experience has been phenomenal.
that's
And I
great.
have to admit, a lot of that is likely due to my rank, my seniority, my track record, the color of my skin, the fact that I work in a nerdy career field with a bunch of other nerds. That certainly makes a difference. But by and
Mhm.
large, that's the reception that trans people in the military, anywhere they are, no matter what career field they're serving in, no matter what rank they are, have had. There are dinosaurs out there, certainly. People have had terrible experiences and encountered horrible bigotry or policy that just hasn't caught up with the times. But mostly in the military, it's about looking to your left, looking to your right, and asking, are you here for the right reasons? Do you have my back? And if the answer is yes, then you're accepted with open arms because you're part of the team. We are all here to protect and defend the people and the nation that we care about so much.
Mhm.
And I'll give an example, my coming out story.
Please.
When the policy changed in 2016, the first time to allow trans people to serve openly, I was a major at the time. I was working at the Pentagon, and I got word that the Secretary of Defense was going to announce this change. And I thought about going down to the briefing room and being a fly on the wall as he made this announcement to the press. Like, probably not. I'm going to stay at my desk and I'm going to watch it on the closed circuit TV. But when he was done speaking, I had already prepared a Facebook post and an email to my colleagues to come out as trans because it was the first
Wow.
day I could.
Wow.
Uh, and he wrapped up, and I was nervous. I'm like, what is the reaction going to be? But eventually, I got the courage to hit post, to hit send, and then I ran away. I went to the gym buried well underneath the Pentagon. I hopped on an elliptical machine and I went nowhere faster than I'd ever gone anywhere in my life. I'm like, am I going to burn out the motor on this thing? Because I have so much nervous energy wondering about what's going to happen. How is my
Yeah.
world going to be different when I get back to my desk? Eventually, I did have to go back. I went there, I sat down, and one by one, my colleagues walked over to me, shook my hand, and said, "It's an honor to serve with you."
Oh,
Uh,
Oh.
and I was absolutely floored because the honor was mine to serve with them. And it was just incredible. On
Mhm.
Facebook, almost nothing but love from my friends and family. But it wasn't perfect. My wife lost a number of friends and family that to this day don't speak with her after that.
Mm.
They're just
Oh.
completely cut her out of her life over who she chose to love. Her parents didn't speak with us for a year, other
oof.
than one email to ask, how are the kids? And so it hurt. Even
Yeah.
among all this joy, there was pain in what happened to her. And that totally wasn't fair. So, but just to take away from that, coming out is not an individual experience. It affects everyone around us.
Mm. Absolutely.
So to be able to have made, I mean, that decision like so quickly in that moment, clearly you had been on a journey for a very long time prior to that to have reached the point where you were like, when this door opens, I will walk through it.
Yeah, it was
I mean, not
not,
to say
oh
the
my God,
obvious,
the
but
secretary's speaking. I'd better hang up this email right away.
Saved in a
That is
draft.
definitely not what happened. I planned. I kind of knew it was coming, and you don't surprise your boss. So I told my boss a few days ahead of time, like, I'm gonna do this, and he's like, huh. Okay. Uh, but up until that point, I had only told fewer people than I could count on one hand.
Wow.
Uh, I had told my wife 3 weeks after we started dating, which at that point was, I don't know, 16 years earlier. I had told my mom a few years earlier, and her reaction was, oh, do you want my jewelry when I die? Because your sister's not going to take it.
Oh,
That's
I
such a
love a
mom
mom.
reaction.
But it's the perfect reaction. It's like, okay, oh,
Yeah.
good. It's
I
gonna
mean, it
go
was
somewhere
that, and I
beautiful.
probably should have known, but that one was.
I think that we all must have some sort of comparable mom story to that. It's just like, what?
and, and I think I had told two other people because it came up in a way that I could make a difference by telling them and sharing this piece of me with them. One was that year I spent as a legislative fellow on the Hill. I was working with a number of other defense fellows in offices, and some legislation was coming up because the department had started talking about, are we going to make this change? And Congress, certain members of Congress were like, ooh, we might need to put a law in place to prevent the DOD from allowing trans people to serve. One of my friends happened to work for the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, and a group of people were talking about it. And at some point in the conversation, it came up, how do you know so much about this? Like, well, I have something I should probably tell you. And we had a great conversation. He was a very receptive audience, went from neutral to, oh, I kind of get it now. And no legislation came out that year. Now, is that because he went back to the office, talked to some other people, and they didn't do anything? I will never be able to say. But if I didn't speak up, didn't say something in that moment, uh, I couldn't have lived with myself. And there was one other time where someone was going through something very personal, where I felt if I shared this about me, they might get a sense of, okay, there are some things that I can get through. There are some things I can relate to you with, and it helped. So it was really important to me. But I knew from a very early age. I mean, I was Wonder Woman alongside my sister when I was 3 years old
Yes.
for Halloween. And then it was a long period of not understanding, knowing something was really different about me, knowing I like to wear women's clothes, and it made me feel good. But you're such in a state that it's like, is this something I like to do, or is this who I am? And as a kid, and the whole world is telling you who you are and who you should be, that's really tough to figure out. So it took me until I was in my 30s to come to the realization that, you know what, this is identity. This isn't something I like to do. This is who I am. And from there, getting involved with an organization like Sparta, which is a nonprofit advocacy organization that provides support and education on behalf of transgender service members. I had friend of a friend, got connected, had worked on policy stuff for them. So that kind of gave me the preparation to know this stuff was coming, and that.
Which, worth noting, is part of the way that we reconnected with you through Lanita. Yes.
Yeah, these connections we form are incredible, and they really meaningful. So it helped me understand in so many ways that I'm not alone. And thank goodness for coming of age at the same time as the internet, to be able to at that point know that I wasn't totally, out on an island by myself, the only one who's ever been in this situation. But it was in that weird tween period where I'm like, I can't find enough on the internet. I still need to go to libraries. And so getting like my car and finding what book in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area, or what library has what book that I can go check out, that was wild. Like, all right, I finally got a license. What am I going to do? I'm going to drive over to the university library and let no one know that I'm getting a book about trans people, and reading that and then returning it because I can't let anyone know.
So, some gender studies professor at that college was very happy
that someone had checked it out.
Yes.
How many? Check the records. Oh, it's been checked out
It's been
5
checked out
times.
by not even my students.
Not my students. Just and put back each time. And you mentioned Sparta. You started working with Sparta prior to coming out, and did that work, like, was that like a catalyst? Did it help sort of give you the courage? I will use a term that's used so much, like, but like to give you just the gonads, be like, yeah, I'm gonna do it now.
Oh, immensely. I started working with Sparta in 2014, and that policy change didn't happen until mid 2016. So,
Yeah.
not being alone, seeing other trailblazers getting out there and making a difference, helping to work behind the scenes to understand what's going on, to use the influence that I had as a relatively senior officer, even at the time, to be able to learn from that, experience that, help others. Oh, what a huge leg up and an important piece of my journey that was. And I spent 8+ years as members of Sparta's leadership or policy committee. I finished my time there as president of Sparta, and that was so valuable to just be a part of it and try and help others and see what we can do, hopefully someday to run ourselves out of business, to be so successful at what we
Yeah.
do that you don't need that kind of organization anymore. We're a long
Yeah.
way from that. But it was great to keep the ball rolling and to work with so many other incredible people that were taking amazing risks to be who they were and to make a difference in the world.
Can I ask you? I'm curious. Did you at any point question the sacrifice that you were making for your commitment to your military life, and the trade-off to live authentically? I mean, that strikes me as um, a real commitment and belief in that life and that institution to be able to make that sacrifice for those years.
Hugely so. There are immense challenges for anyone who has to subsume part of their identity, particularly where there's no reason to do so. And so any member of the LGBTQ community who served under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, which banned lesbians, gays, and bisexuals from serving openly, or trans people, after that, we all had to basically put this filter in our brains. And that filter had to be really strong, and we had to
Mm.
dedicate a lot of ourselves to maintaining it, because if we had a thought, we could not let that turn into words that came out of our mouth or actions that we took that might reveal who we actually are. And so the way I translate that to Star Trek, that is, I am running around shields up at all
Yeah,
All
times.
times.
yeah,
And so full power to the shields, protect who I am.
Red
And
Yeah.
hey,
alert.
that means there's less power available to be dedicated to relationships with people around me, to the
Mhm.
task I have been given. So I always like to say, you could be good at your job, you could be great at your job, but when you are running around with shields up, you are never your best. And that's what we did to thousands and thousands of people by saying, you can't serve authentically. And the fact that there were thousands and thousands of people willing to do so because they believed in what we were doing, they believed in the ideals of this country. And we all swear an oath to the Constitution, not to
Sure
any
do.
person, but
Mhm.
it's to the Constitution. And to me, it's to the ideals embedded in the Constitution. How can I protect and defend and make reality those ideals? And we talk about advocacy and making change, and there's so much that can be done from outside an organization. And that often calls for the loud people, the fireball throwers. But there's also that quiet work that can be done inside an organization by people who are part of it, who can say, I've been here all along. I am part of this. Why is my service less valuable than anyone else's? Because look at my track record. Look at what I've done
Mhm.
with these limiters on me, with shields up. But now look at us fully authentic and who we are, who we can be. And people have just blossomed. It has been so amazing to watch. And we are stronger for it as a military and as a country.
Well, and it's this is a fascinating point that your book makes that I is not a way that I have ever looked at this before. That we tend to think of our closetedness and our sort of queer trauma of whatever, the kinds that we have acquired over our lives in the closet or various other aspects of our lives as burdens that we carry around, as scars that we carry around, and that I had not considered that that these things are actually skills that we've honed that can be translated into other things, the things that can benefit us and others in the world in ways that we have had to think about the way that we behave and that other people don't. It had never occurred to me that this is an opportunity as opposed to just like baggage.
Right. How do we turn that adversity into strength? How do we get rid of the focus on trauma and look at joy and look at ability that we all have? And so this journey to writing Forging Queer Leaders was awesome. And it was so fun to explore what leadership skills, what other skills are built through unique experiences to the queer community, such as coming out, transition. Now, there's a whole lot of also that's in there about just adversity, and there's a lot of adversity that is very similar to what is faced by other communities that have been discriminated against, people of
Certainly.
color, women, and there's a lot of overlap. But there are some unique things about queer folks too that I think were really fascinating to explore. And what's so cool is that this came out of a paper that I wrote in War College. And the whole paper was about how the experiences of minorities in the military built them as leaders. And along with my professor and my co-author of the book, Dr. Liz Cavaliero, uh, we said, there's way more here. But how do we do it in something that makes sense for us as a book? And that was both narrowing the scope from all minorities to queer folks, and also broadening the scope, not just the military, but everywhere. And so figuring out how to expand that and write that and speak with people and figure out their experiences and what are the lessons to take away was so cool. And I'll give you one example of kind of how those skills develop. The one I really look at is when people are in the closet and we are protecting our identities. Again, shields up. We're also looking for threats all the time. I am walking into a room.
Sensors on full.
Exactly. Sensors to maximum
up.
range.
Power to sensors.
Who are the people that are a threat to me if I were to come out in this environment? Are there any of them? What are they wearing? What are the little cues that I might pick up that says this person or this place is not friendly? And that's
Yes.
taxing on us in itself to do that scanning of the environment.
Mhm.
But you know what? When we turn it around and we're authentic and we're not worrying about that, those same things you pick up on are ways you connect to other people. You're like, oh, my message is resonating with you because I saw the facial expression that you made, or I see this thing that you're wearing and oh, I probably have this in common with you. Maybe I should start with that as a connection. So those returns you're getting off your sensors are all of a sudden dedicated to a purpose of building connection and getting things done rather than protecting yourself. So it's a really weird flip side of the coin. Like, hey, I built all those skills. Now I'm going to use them for good.
Not to mention empathy, empathy for other
Yes,
people that you don't, that
absolutely.
ways that we might not have otherwise. Yes.
Oh, yeah, full speed ahead on empathy and the ability to put yourself in not only in someone else's shoes, but to look from their perspective and say, what might they be thinking about this situation?
I also just want to say that your book reads like social science, and I gotta say, I never saw Geordie LaForge venture into that. Also, it was just like super impressive. Is all I would say.
Look, when I was growing up, I said dinosaurs, then astronautical engineering. Author was not in any of that. I did not ever think that I would get there, and now I'm working on my third book. So it's
Oh my God.
crazy to think,
Gosh.
wow, how did I get here from there? But the real amazing thing that I've been able to do in all my books is not only tell some of my story, but help tell other stories. And that's where the power comes in. Because as we kind of say in the beginning of the book, we don't want you to take away facts and figures because that doesn't stick with you. They might be interesting, but what you're going to remember are the stories and how they made you feel. And so we wanted to make sure we got our points across with story. And I've been so honored by people that have been willing to share their stories with me and let me tell them in a way that is compelling.
And how did you get people to that? Like, you know, you have this idea like, okay, I want to drill down, but open up to tell queer stories. How do you find the people, aside from those that you may know personally or like within a small little ecosystem, out to this many leaders in this variety of not locations of uh job classes. I don't know why the word is not coming to me, but like, you know, different organizations, and like, how did you reach
Yeah, to
out? Was it
get
like a,
doctors and
yeah,
lawyers
exactly.
and
Was
CEOs.
it like, hello, Facebook post, writing a book? You
I,
know anybody? Send them my way.
Uh, that was it
Oh,
because social
okay.
media is amazing.
If you
And
ask,
we
they will
did, of
say
course,
yes.
tap into our network, friends of friends, do that type of thing. But we got a lot of people with this book through those social media posts, primarily on LinkedIn. And to a certain extent on Facebook. Hey, here's what we're doing. We're writing a book about this. Here's what we believe. And if you'd like to contribute, we'd love to talk to you. And we
Wow.
did that in a number of different ways. We had surveys, we did short question and answers, and we did long form interviews with a number of people. And in combining all of that, we were like, oh my God, we have so much data and so many good anecdotes. How do we put it all together then was the challenge.
Mm.
And then even after we had the book and we had all these great stories, we're like, I want more. Which is why we started our podcast, Forged in Fire, which continues to explore these themes of how did these queer leaders of all varieties get to be who they are? And I think it's both inspiring and informative. You can learn something about leadership, or if you're a young queer person, like, wow, they got there, or they went through all these really difficult things that I might be going through right now, and they turned out and did these amazing things. That's awesome. And even more fun, I just get to have those conversations, and we get to record them and archive them, and that to me is tons of fun to keep the conversation going.
Something that you said really rang in my ear, that what's important is what you'll remember is the stories, and not the facts and figures. And I think that is the difference between a good story in science fiction and a bad story in science fiction. Like if you're relying too much on the technobabble and the MacGuffin, and and not on the story and the characters and how they make you feel, then it's like that is the fine line in which we
I'm
judge.
I'm not thinking about this as the fact that it's Voyager's 9th shuttle that just got destroyed and they only ever had 2 in the first place. I'm thinking about the story they're telling right now.
Yes, exactly.
Oh God, that's perfect.
um the other thing that your book made me realize is that in the next Star Trek series, we need to have a queer captain, because they would be an amazing leader.
7 of
Given
9.
7 of 9. Well,
No,
if we'd gotten Star Trek Legacy,
Sorry.
that's a whole other.
don't count it out yet. Listen, we always keep the light on for all
We
of the
do.
things that we want to happen.
And
The
sorry, Jerry Ryan,
Motel
my
6.
7 of 9 has a mustache, and I stand by that.
I was also 7 of 9 one Halloween.
Were
and
you
if
really?
you have to
Yay!
pick anyone to emulate, oh yes, she's fantastic.
Well, now you're begging follow-up questions here. 7 of 9 of what era?
Voyager era, because I was super cheap and I'm like, I just can find a gray unitard. That's easy. That was $12 or whatever. And get a little thing on Etsy. And so it may not have been high quality, but it got it done.
I definitely have the
Cool, yeah.
brown bronze unitard in a closet and with the corset, and let's just say I'm not as comfortable in it as I anticipated. It may never see the light of day.
Yeah, when we were at a convention recently, Damien tried that on and was like, "Do you think I can wear this?" I'm like, I think you maybe need a dance belt before you wear that. I'm just gonna say that.
You
Yes.
might want to make some
So
better life choices. Yeah.
Mike can
Maybe
be
some better life choice.
Mike can be counted on for the honest GBR, which is a good
You sh-
takeaway.
You should have snapped a picture before you said no, so that I could have been a part of that too, Mike Jones. Like, let's just be clear about things.
Well, next time you'll be there.
This is true. This is true. This is true.
So we have questions that we ask everybody, and I think some of them will lead to some interesting conversations. What was your Star Trek meet cute? Like, when did you first get introduced to Trek?
Well, that was certainly that first episode of Next Generation that made
Do you
me.
remember what it was?
I have no idea.
Okay. It just seared
So
into your brain like,
yeah,
Jordy, yes.
but because
engineer.
I was, I said 9, maybe 10, so that must have been, 1989. So we're talking probably second or third season. And so somewhere in there, I
That
found
works.
my Trek.
Perfect. Then did you go back and watch TOS?
TOS is the one I have watched less than anything else.
Wow.
I certainly it would come on and I would see a little bit of it. I think that's the one series that I have not gone back and like watched on streaming or anything. So not much. I got it. I knew it. I understood all the characters.
Right. Well, they're at this point they're archetypes. Everybody knows Spock, everybody knows Kirk, whether you've watched the show or not. You know what I mean?
And when growing up with the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager era, that seemed like so long ago and so dated. Like, why would
Yeah.
I go back and do that? I've got news stories, and I don't. You cared about special effects, not storytelling at that point when you're a teenager. Like,
Of
make things
course.
blow up and look cool. But it was also competing with. Even though I am a huge Trekkie, it was the same time. My favorite series is Babylon 5. For
Oh,
pure
Fascinating.
storytelling, that was amazing. I mean, to the point where I gave one of my children a name from a character in Babylon 5.
Oh, that's amazing.
That's
What
so
name?
awesome.
So, Delenn.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's
Now,
I need to
awesome.
go
Middle
back and
name.
watch Babylon 5.
Yeah, I've
I've never
have.
seen it.
Oh, she's recruiting. She's recruiting.
Get on it. Now again, that's now 25.
Yeah.
No, but that's
almost
okay.
30 years old. So
Mm.
you'll,
That's
but
fine.
the
That's fine with
storytelling,
me. That's fine with me. How many seasons?
5.
Oh, that's easy. I can
So
eat that for a
doable.
weekend. Yeah, for me, I'm a completionist. At 5 seasons. Oh,
We've lost
Season
her.
1 will be tough, but by season 2, you will be hooked.
Now and this is, I only know this anecdotally, but there was a lot of sort of belief that Star Trek had ripped off Babylon 5 when Deep Space Nine came out, and that did that ever seem like in conflict to you, or was it so different that you never thought of it that way?
I did not ever really think of it that way, and because they came out contemporarily, I'm sure there was some of it because Babylon 5 really did premiere and build that what we think of the modern storytelling arc in TV, where look, things actually matter from episode to episode. You don't hit the
Mm.
reset button, and it kind of built that storytelling genre, particularly in sci-fi.
Mhm.
So where if I would say Deep Space Nine took the concept and ran with it, wouldn't have been until like season 4 or 5 where you
Yeah.
started to get those multi-episode arcs
yeah.
and tell the story of the Dominion War, which was where Deep Space Nine shined. So
Oh,
if
right.
Deep Space Nine took anything from Babylon 5, I am thrilled that it did, because Deep Space Nine got so much better once it took and got rid of mostly that serialized storytelling and built arcs.
Nice.
Which of the franchises is your favorite? Which one is the one you go back? I know I'm asking you to pick which child is your favorite, but
Your comfort food.
My
Yeah.
answer has changed over time. I still think my favorite is Deep Space Nine. Because I started Next Generation was it. Deep Space Nine built on me over time and took that lead spot. But I mean, Strange New Worlds and Lower Decks are so good. It is
Yes.
so hard to contrast those.
Mm.
I'm gonna need the full run of those shows to really make up my mind. But and Lower Decks is in such a different category, and I
Yeah.
love it, love it,
Absolutely.
love
Love
it.
it. Okay.
But I have a feeling it's going to be Strange New Worlds and Deep Space Nine that are running neck and neck when all is said and done.
That's a good new versus old. Like if we look at it like there's not, I want to call it old, but there's, canon Trek. And now there's this new sort of like built upon what has come before it. So you can hold Deep Space Nine and Strange New Worlds. They can both be, number one in each of the categories.
But if I have to go to favorite episode, it is the Strange New Worlds Lower Decks crossover as the greatest thing ever to happen to Star Trek.
And that is the correct answer. That is the
What are they
correct
I'm glad
So
I fit in.
good.
I love the unpromptness of it. We didn't even have to like lead the witness. It was
I
literally
know.
Yeah, yeah. Can I ask you I feel like Star Trek has done sort of a mixed job over its history of representing queer people, and I would say not even maybe a bad job early, but yet we all, not we all, so many of us, I don't want to say we all anything, identify so strongly with it. Do you have a sense of or what that means to you, or why do you think that we as queer people lean so heavily on Star Trek in that way?
Looking back from our perspective today, you could say they didn't do very well. What they did at the time, though, in many ways was incredibly groundbreaking in the stories they shared and the characters they had. And that's in not just queer stories, but in racial issues and so many others. Star Trek presented a vision of the future we could all aspire to, where everyone is valued for who they are. And that, I think, is what has drawn so many of us to the show. And there's almost always, and particularly now, there's someone you can see yourself in. And while Geordi was my initial inspiration, and that was merely from what are you doing as a technical skill?
Yeah.
I really learned later on, who I was meant to be and the representation I needed to see was Jadzia Dax. Because if you talk about someone from who showed the queer stories and the trans stories and the badass female engineer stories I didn't know I needed at the time when I was watching it, it was her. So when I got to meet Terry a little while back and give her the patch off my uniform and make her an honorary member of the Space Force, I'm like, you are why I'm here in so many reasons, for so many reasons. That smile, you cannot wipe it off my face. So it is moments like that, I think, that queer kids can have, and they can see someone, even if they didn't know themselves well enough to know that's who they needed to see, they get to see that now in Trek and see a future for themselves. And so kudos to Star Trek for pushing the envelope, even if in retrospect, they may not have done it as well as we would have liked them to.
Oh, well put.
Absolutely. Yeah, and modern Trek is continuing to, I think, use the science fiction allegory to show us ourselves. In Strange New Worlds, number one is, an Illyrian and closeted, couldn't be honest about her, where she's from, came out to Pike separately because she trusts him. I mean, it's just like, my little gay brain was like,
Tears
yes.
in some of those, like, oh my God, I could put gay or trans or anything else in, and I could change the storyline and it would be exactly the same.
Yep.
And so well done.
So
Yes.
well done.
Well,
Like
and we
a
see it
visual
in
representation of what it actually feels like to, again, have shields up, to have sensors on, and to still be expected to perform at the highest level and doing it, but knowing that you can do even more if you could focus 100% of yourself on the task at hand.
Yes, absolutely.
And
It's
I
fun
feel
to
like
be among friends.
I feel like the cool thing about seeing that as an allegory on Strange New Worlds, though, I think some of the time, like in Next Generation era, we saw this as an allegory because they couldn't deal with it directly. So there's the episode The Outcast, which we have covered and talked about, which I think actually ages kind of better than it did when I first saw it. But I remember
Mhm.
feeling like, gosh, they can't deal with this directly because the audience isn't ready for it. Whereas now we see it on Strange New Worlds, and it really is that sort of sci-fi utopia. They're not dealing with it directly because in the world that they're dealing with, it's not a thing in
That
the
wouldn't
same
be
way.
an
It's not a
issue,
thing.
right?
It's not an
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you're right in talking about how the stories have evolved, and our ability to tell those stories has certainly
Yep.
evolved as well. And I so appreciate Star Trek for still being willing to go there and to talk about social issues today and reflect ourselves back to ourselves. And so it's so funny. Whenever people just don't get it. They're like, this is cool sci-fi. Well, there's some messaging here behind it too that is really valuable. Um,
Yeah.
and I think other thing that is really interesting is how shows like this you can watch as a child or particularly as a teenager and get very different takeaways than you do watching it again as an adult. And the show I go to that it maybe does this better than anything other than Star Trek, which does it well, is The Simpsons. Like, go
Uh,
back and watch a Simpsons
Yes.
episode from
Yeah.
30 years ago that you
Yeah.
watched
yeah.
as a child, and you will laugh, but it will be at completely different points.
Because
And
you've lived. Because
yeah,
you've lived, like you have lived experience to understand like why that's funny. Like I always say that about cartoons or like movies, Pixar. There's the part for the kids, and then there's always this little nugget for the parent who has to go. And your kids looking at you like, why are you laughing at that? Wait till you've lived. You'll be laughing at that same part too. It's fascinating.
right. Yeah, and it's the same with the drama elements. There are some things you can get watching Next Generation as a 13-year-old that are going to be very different from what you pick up on watching it in your 30s, 40s, or beyond.
And it's also
Absolutely.
like about your language changing. Like I feel like because language has grown and we have access to so much more, for better or for worse, allows there to be less spoon feeding of information and just being like presenting it. Like everybody rise up. Like let's go. Here's what we're talking about. Here's what we're showing. And if you don't understand it, then you have the access, the computer in your pocket to go say, what's this about? Oh, okay, go back and watch it, completely understand in a different way than you did when you first saw it.
Right. Well, and Star Trek has been around long enough to see the evolution of television. I mean, I think Roddenberry even made this complaint about television in the early '60s that the purpose of television was to sell toothpaste. You know that it was just the advertisers had so much control, and they still do. But we've taken that, or the talented artists have taken that and made this storytelling art form that really shows us ourselves and makes us think about things from a different perspective. And that's Star Trek when it's at its best. Um, I see Lenita is live
I,
editing
I
the
am
notes
yes, because
because you see we're
because
coming up on an hour.
I
So
know, but I want the rapid fire. The rapid fire is always good. And you no, see, because we're like, here's the thing, like we have talked to a lot of different people, right? And there's certain genres that we have talked to, certain levels, and you are like at the end of the day, like you're a colonel. Like I'm from a military family. Like the plus one was in the military for some time, so like it's a big fucking deal.
Being
Like,
a being a four pipper is kind of weird. I will admit
no,
it's
it's listen, you
I am the
deserve all
adult.
the
People think of
yes,
me as an adult.
you're the
I, as a
adult.
junior officer, would have thought of me as an adult, and it's weird.
That's what I'm saying. So like, so when we were just like, we're doing this, then you said yes. I was like, woo, Dave is on, take over scheduling. I don't want anything to do with it. I'm like over the moon excited. So like we're very, very prepared. However, I want the rapid fire because it's fun.
Okay. All right. So here's some fun questions. Did you ever own Star Trek action figures? Or do you still own any Star Trek figures? If so, which ones?
I had a model of the Enterprise, but I never had the characters.
Which Enterprise?
Enterprise D.
Nice.
So, and now there's a little bit of memorabilia. So sitting in my office at the Pentagon is along the wall is every Enterprise made out of wood.
Oh,
And it's beautiful. And
Wow.
so every
that's
single Enterprise
lovely.
hangs in the Space Force section of the Pentagon right now.
I want to
This is
know what is
amazing.
I mean, people have to come into your office and have a reaction to that. I mean, like, what's the reaction like?
It's been muted. I just got it up a couple days ago.
Okay.
I had been waiting for it to arrive and get
Oh, I
that
want
up.
to see it.
And I share an office with multiple people because we don't have enough space for anyone.
Of course.
And most people are like, I think are just like, I'm here to see the Colonel. Can I talk about the Enterprises?
Yes.
No.
You should
And
have
I'm
a
like,
little
I
thing
put
on
them
your
up because I want you to talk about the Enterprises.
on your desk. You should have a little sign. Ask me about my ships. Like just
really
write
should.
you right.
Point taken. I will have that sign.
Awesome. Did you go to conventions as a kid? And I know you've been to some as an adult as a guest.
No, the very first one I went to was where I met you. And so that was 6 months ago. And to be able to do so in my official capacity and to represent the service was amazing. I had never had the opportunity before then. Or
Well,
I'm
and
sure I
I
had the
was
opportunity. I simply had other priorities, I guess,
Oh, of course.
and
I
perhaps didn't realize I would have enjoyed it so much.
Sure.
well, it's funny because when we met, I was so blown away that you were there representing the Space Force that when we first met, you mentioned the Space Force, and I was in this because anytime I had been to a convention as a kid, everybody was like the captain of some fictional starship.
Right.
Like I'm representing some club in Utica, like, and
I
so when you
lived in
said Space
Utica.
Force, I'm from not far from there. That
Well, yeah,
when you said the real Space Force, my first reaction, and I was so embarrassed in the moment, was like, "What's that?" Because it didn't occur to me that a real colonel in the Space Force would be there at the convention, and I just thought it was like a sci-fi thing. And then you were in your full uniform the next day. I was just it was amazing.
So sometimes when I ride into the Pentagon on the metro here in DC, I will have people look at me and be like, "Are you real? Is that a costume?" And I'm like, no, this is my uniform. The Space Force is a real thing.
oh my
So
God.
you're not alone in that
I'd like to say that I
questioning
knew that the Space
attitude.
Force was a real thing, but it was really just the fact that we were at a Star Trek convention. and my previous convention experience, I had and Mike, I don't know if this is the same for you. I don't think I had been since I was maybe like 10, 12 years old, So that was my first convention as an adult anyway.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I'd done a couple as an adult. But yeah, it was an interesting thing being in a room full of people in their uniforms with their rank, and they're all fictional. And it's like, here are some real people in real uniforms. It was like
real rank.
Yes, we had literally just got. You remember this, Mike? We had just
Yes.
gotten out of an elevator with a dude who was dressed like a captain, like a Starfleet captain, and was there was an issue with the elevator, and he had this sort of
you had to
like
scan your card, and it wasn't happening. It
he
was
had like a self-important captain moment, and
Yeah.
where we kind of were like,
He was like, I have somewhere to be. And
not
it's
a real
like, sir, you bought those pips. Like, you're not important here. uh,
this is not rapid fire. We're going to
I know that we're not being very rapid about this.
Yes.
Okay. If you could have dinner with 3 Star Trek characters, not the actors, but the characters, who would they be and why?
It would probably have to be, if 3 in combination, I want Geordi, Data, and Worf. I want to go back to home. where I grew up, and those three, and just the reactions, the playing off one another, the friendships, and the craziness that could ensue would be a ton of fun, and way better than chasing my cat named Worf around.
You had a cat named Worf?
I have a cat named Worf.
Oh,
And Worf is the bestest boy, and he is the best of my cats. He is the furthest from a warrior that any of my cats are. He's love me, love me, love me. So we clearly got the names wrong with who we went with, but he's awesome.
So
As long as he has
you want a
honor.
seat at the
Yeah,
poker table, is what you're saying.
I would love a seat at the poker table. Those scenes at the end of Next Generation and the end of
Oh.
Picard, just
Gut you.
yeah. And now, as a colonel, I want that feeling with my team, with my future crews, and I hope that I'm building that in what I do. And that's what's been so amazing for me. Like when I did transition, and I was a commander at the time, and my unit threw me a party, and we had cookies in my office. And that's the kind of relationship I want to have with every team I'm a part of. I want to be that captain that gets a seat at the poker table and still has time to know the people as individuals.
Do you feel like I feel like I'm just now, this is a leading question, but did you have an experience ever of watching that scene, you were always welcome, sky's the limit, end of Next Generation, after reaching like a senior leadership point where you were like, oh, that is like, did that scene ever hit you differently?
Yes, it truly did, because I think I rewatched Next Generation 4 or 5 years ago, and I was a lieutenant colonel at the time, and yes, again, we talk about how it hit you in 1994 when
Yeah.
I was 15 versus in that position of leading a bunch of people and being like, I am crying in a very, very different reason right now.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's so awesome.
I feel like you've already answered this, but it's the next question on the list. If you lived in the 24th century, what would your life be like? Would you be in Starfleet? Would you stay Earthbound?
That's actually a really good question that I haven't thought of. But yes, would I be in Starfleet? Absolutely. What role? It's interesting. I asked me that 15 years ago, 20 years ago, and I said I'd have been an engineer. Now I'm not so sure. I think it is more about people development and leadership for me. So if you're tracked immediately, it would have been the command track for me.
Right. Excellent. What's your go-to holodeck program?
Ooh, well, if we consider that my Meta Quest and my Les Mills Body Combat as a workout, that is kind of my go-to holodeck program today, because it is an amazing workout in only 20-30 minutes. So I guess I'm there with today.
That's amazing.
That's a
amazing.
terrific
That's
like
you're already there. It's not exactly Worf's calisthenics program, but
well, and I, like so many VR games, I'm sure from the outside I must look amazing. I am punching these discs and I'm doing these squats and I look great. And then if someone turns the camera on you, you're like, oh my God, don't let anyone ever see that, because I am a disaster.
Well, you're alone in the holodeck. I mean, though theoretically, if we've learned anything from Barclay, anyone can walk in at any moment. So.
Absolutely.
It's
Be
true.
careful. I should shut my door more
Yeah.
often.
Right. Are you Team Crusher or Team Pulaski?
Oh, I'm definitely Team Crusher.
Very good.
Excellent. Lenita's like, that's the correct answer. Are you taking Worf's Klingon Tai Chi class or doing leotard yoga with Beverly and Deanna?
Can we do it with the Lower Decks characters?
Yes. Who it's Shax and
with
Ransom.
Shax and Ransom, yeah.
That's the perfect answer.
That is an acceptable.
Then I'm going there.
Tea, Earl Grey hot or coffee black?
Well, given my shirt and the fact that tea is
have to.
badly flavored water.
Ah!
I have yet to find a
take.
tea that I can stand. Although, admittedly, first I'll take the coffee black, and then I'll add my peppermint creamer and a little bit of sugar because I'm
Yes.
kind of a frou-frou coffee drinker. But start with the coffee black,
Misleading.
and then I'll
I
deal with
love
it
it.
on my own.
If you had a replicator sitting next to you right now, what would you replicate?
Probably Cheetos.
Cheetos.
Crunchy or poofy?
Yeah,
Oh,
crunchy or poofy.
crunchy.
That's the big
What
question.
do you mean crunchy?
Poofy?
Listen,
I like the
no,
poofy.
those
No,
are puffs.
you are
Those are
wrong.
not. Those are. You are wrong. Those are not Cheetos.
They are
Those are Cheeto
Cheeto
puffs.
brand puffs.
Right.
They're
Wrong.
still Cheetos.
The only
There's a Venn
cheese.
diagram here.
I don't care. The only cheese puffs that are acceptable are hers, and it has a woodchuck on the bag. That's it. Let's be clear.
You know
Although
anything with a
here's
woodchuck on it is quality.
the sign of quality. Here's a tip: if you want your coworkers to make fun of you, eat your Cheetos with chopsticks to keep your fingers clean. It keeps your fingers clean. I'm just saying.
It's smart. It is
But
smart.
I was
though. I give you
really
that.
made fun of for doing that in the office the other day.
That is brilliant.
It's sanitary.
Right. Who is your Star Trek bartender, Guinan or Quark?
Oh, I'd have to be honest and say Guinan. I would probably enjoy it more of those reflective conversations. But if I was feeling mischievous, I'm all about Quark.
Quark.
We never know what we're going to get into at Quarks, right?
Right.
You could win big at the dabble wheel, or
I'm far more likely to go time traveling or something with Guinan.
right. And that was our rapid fire questions. We should come up with a better final question than the bartender question.
Well, we
my
also
God.
have like our own hot button issue that we can't seem to get past.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's the hot button issue, Damien?
This is Team
Wait.
Tasha or Team Armis.
Ooh. You know,
Which seems obvious, but one of us is Team Armis, just to be clear.
I bought props for this.
If it's like-
actually.
Oh, yes.
season one Tasha, I'm probably on Team Armis. Her coming back on yesterday's Enterprise, I would totally be on Team Tasha. They just didn't have her right. They struggled, I think, writing good female characters early on.
Absolutely.
So if we're talking at the time they encountered each other, good work, Armis.
And
Wow.
that is the correct answer.
Well, and it's funny because we have, and we've been through this once or twice. But that, but there, Mike and I are of the position because we are like you. We discovered probably almost within a couple years of one another. First run Next Generation, grew up with it. Lanita was a fan, became a fan as an adult, which has been given us unique viewpoints, different perspectives on things. Yes, and it's been very interesting. But Tasha was one of those issues where, as and correct me if I misspeak on your behalf, Mike, but I think as like little gay boys, we saw this like sort of, albeit poorly written, but we didn't know that as kids, like female action figure,
right.
And she was giving something in between like butch and femme. There was some masculinity, femininity in there, and as like a gay boy, there was something appealing that I connected to about her. But that as an adult, I can see, oh boy, they did her wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
She had every possibility of being a great badass. And it just never came. And I mean, you literally had Worf become her and be the character she should have been.
Right. Yeah. I think she was originally supposed to be, or she was sort of inspired by Sigourney Weaver's character from Aliens. But they never went there with her.
Who is my wife's favorite sci-fi character of all time.
A valid pick.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's solid.
Absolutely.
That's who she has been for Halloween for the past few years.
Who are you going as this year? Who's
And
the
I was
whole
like,
family going as this year?
good job, Mike Jones. Mhm.
I don't have a plan. I am actually most years a terrible party pooper. I'm the one like, hey, you all put on your costumes and go trick or treating. I'll hand out candy at the door. But figured out maybe I'll go back to being one of the characters from Archer, who I've been.
Nice.
Um, I don't
I love
know. I
Archer.
haven't made that decision yet.
Okay, well,
We got some
so
time.
it's not a whole family group then. You don't all like
No, we
you
don't
know.
really like each other, so we don't
Just all different universes.
It's either that
I
or
love it.
what the kids are into. I'm like, no, thank you. Not
Right.
in a million years.
Well, and
Uh,
it's funny because we've had that conversation about kids discovering Star Trek and how and who are the younger generation that are discovering Star Trek, and do they exist, and do things like Prodigy make that connection? Or
Yes, I have had such an amazing experience watching Prodigy with my daughter while she was 11. She just turned 12, but
oh, amazing.
Now we
I
know.
drew her into it with Prodigy and she loved it. It was the first show we like together could really sit down and enjoy. And so
That's
I was
awesome.
thrilled. And she's like, not only do we need more Prodigy, but she's like, why isn't there more Murph merchandise? We need more Murph.
Yes,
She's,
amen.
That's what I
That's a
said.
smart kid you've got there.
Absolutely.
she's finally figuring some stuff out.
She could probably get a job at Paramount.
Oh my gosh.
She's now saying she wants to be a lawyer, so maybe she'll be an intellectual property lawyer for them and make sure she licenses Murph appropriately.
Amen.
Love
Amen.
it.
Somebody needs to take that over at Paramount. Well, I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I just want to say thank you so much for taking time to join us today. The hour has flown by. I can't believe it. um, do you want to like where can people find you? Where can they find your book?
Oh, you can find me at my website, breefram.com, or find me across social media on LinkedIn. I'm pretty easy to find. And please, you can find the book anywhere. The website is there, but Amazon, Barnes &
Found it on
Noble, any
Amazon.
major
Yep.
retailer. The new
Your
one,
local
Forging
bookshop.
Queer Leaders, is also available as an audiobook, which I got to read half of,
Oh,
along with my
cool.
co-author reading half of it. So that was a crazy experience. So check it out. I would love to connect with anyone.
Excellent. It makes me think of those outtakes of William Shatner being corrected in the sound booth saying sabotage versus sabotage. Like I want there to be outtakes on your audiobook. Anyway, sorry. So I know I'm sabotaging my own wrap up by thinking of
Usually
Mike
Lanita
Jones, it's a-
sabotages his wrap up.
usually
It
Lanita.
is usually
She's
The
not
Lanita.
best
doing
way
it.
to do it, you
Step
got to
up.
put the incorrect emphasis on the wrong
On the
syllable.
wrong syllable.
On the wrong
Exactly.
syllable.
Exactly. No, you know what? Hold on. I am going to interrupt you, Mike Jones,
Okay.
really quickly, Bree. How was the book tour?
It was a ton of fun. It was just a self-funded, hey, are you willing bookstore to have us for a few hours? And we did a tour from Provincetown in Massachusetts down to south of DC, one bookstore a night for a week, and had small audiences, but just wonderful questions and so neat. Financially, it was terrible because I spent more at all those little independent bookstores than I'm sure I came anywhere near making in book sales. And I have a stack of books this high still waiting for me on my nightstand from all of it, but a ton of fun. Thanks for asking.
It looked like a great time. I was following along. I was like, ooh, that looks like a good one.
All right. Well, thank you, dear listener, if for joining us today. If you have liked what you've heard, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the other socials at Hailing Freak Open, or on our webpage at hailingfrequenciesopen.com. I want to thank my co-hosts for another fun evening and distracting me from the impending hurricane that is coming right now. And with all of that, I will say, Hailing Frequencies closed.
No goodbyes. Just good memories. Hailing frequencies closed, sir.